The morning air in Quang Ngai carried a heaviness that wasn't just humidity. We'd left base before sunrise, a routine patrol along the Song-Ve River Valley. The maps called it secure, but no one believed that word anymore. Every rice paddy hid a memory, every footpath a possibility. I was team leader then, 23 years old and already old enough to know that calm never lasted long in this country. We moved in staggered formation, 5 meters apart, eyes scanning for tripwires glinting in the dew. The point man, Collins, raised his fist once. Possible movement near the treeline. Through the haze, dark figures bent low in the paddies, carrying long poles that looked too much like rifles. We froze. The radio crackled. Command wanted confirmation before we engaged. But in the static and heat shimmer, the shapes looked armed, purposeful. A shadow moved toward us, and instinct took over. I gave the order. 3 bursts from the M16s cracked through the mist. The echoes rolled across the fields, scattering egrets into the sky. Then silence. We advanced cautiously, rifles raised. The first body we reached wasn't wearing black pajamas or carrying an AK. It was a farmer, face down in the mud beside a broken irrigation pole. 2 others lay nearby, one still clutching a woven basket of seedlings. The smell of wet soil mixed with cordite. My stomach turned cold even as sweat ran down my back. Collins whispered something, but I didn't hear. The sound of a woman crying somewhere beyond the paddies cut through everything. It wasn't supposed to happen. We were supposed to be the ones protecting them. The woman's voice carried over the paddies, rising and falling like the wind through the palms. We followed the sound until we saw her, barefoot in a conical hat, standing beside the body of the man we'd just shot. She couldn't have been older than 40, but grief made her look ancient. 2 children clung to her legs, eyes wide, silent. Behind them, water buffalo grazed as if nothing had changed. That quiet made it worse. We radioed for medevac, though there was nothing for a helicopter to save. Protocol demanded a report, but none of us wanted to speak. The lieutenant's voice came through the handset, clipped and metallic. "Confirm enemy, Kia?" I stared at the faces in the mud and couldn't answer. Collins finally replied, "Negative, sir. Civilians." There was a pause long enough to hear the insects buzzing. Then, "Secure the area. Proceed as planned." That's how it worked back then. The war didn't stop for mistakes. Paperwork absorbed guilt better than people could. We wrapped the bodies in ponchos, marked the spot on the map, and moved on down the trail. No one said a word for the next hour, but I kept replaying it. The shimmer of the paddies, the outline of the poles, the way fear rushes through you faster than thought. Back home, people like to say it was easy to tell who was the enemy. Out here, it wasn't. The enemy wasn't just unseen, it was uncertainty itself. It hid in the mist, in the echoes of a gunshot, in the trembling hands of a man realizing he'd pulled the trigger too soon. When we finally stopped for water, Collins sat apart from the group. His hands were shaking. Mine weren't. Why noon? The sun had burned through the fog, revealing every footprint, every shell casing. The paddies glittered under the heat, but the air between us stayed frozen. The radio operator logged the incident in the patrol book with a single line, "Unconfirmed contact, 3 civilian casualties," and closed it like it meant nothing. Maybe it had to mean nothing, at least for now. There were still hours of open terrain between us and the next checkpoint, and the jungle ahead waited with the same patience it always did. We moved on. Slower now, each step a little heavier. When we passed a hamlet an hour later, the villagers watched us in silence, their faces blank. You learn to read fear and hatred without needing words. One old man stood by the road with a red scarf tied around his wrist, the local marker for mourning. He didn't move aside when we passed. I could feel his stare between my shoulder blades long after he was gone from sight. That night, back at base, I tried to write the after-action report. Every sentence felt like a lie of omission. Possible enemy movement. Standard engagement procedure followed. No hostile weapons recovered. Each phrase scrubbed the truth clean until it was just another incident number in a long war. I remember staring at the paper, thinking of the children in the field. The lieutenant signed it without reading, then said, "Happens sometimes. Don't carry it. But you don't get to choose what you carry." The next morning, the local interpreter came to our compound. He'd found out the man we shot was named Tranduk, a farmer who supplied rice to both the ARVN and the US base. His wife's name was Mai. The children were 5 and 8 that I kept the interpreter's note folded in my pocket for weeks, long after the paper turned soft from sweat. Every patrol after that felt different. The jungle hadn't changed, but I had. I stopped trusting shapes in the mist, stopped believing the maps when they marked an area as secure. When you've seen innocence mistaken for threat, every sound carries doubt. The line between safety and sin becomes just another contour on a topographic chart. A month later, we passed the same valley again. The paddies were green, new seedlings rising from the mud. I saw Mai once more, standing near the water's edge. She didn't look at us, didn't shout, didn't run. She just turned away, shoulders rigid, and kept working the soil with her hands. None of us spoke. Collins murmured a quiet prayer under his breath, but even that felt out of place here. The war moved on without her forgiveness, and without ours. Years later, when people asked what it was like, I never told this story. I talked about the heat, the rations, the boredom, never about the morning the mist fooled our eyes. There's no glory in error, no comfort in hindsight. History books measure wars in battles and treaties, not in the seconds between a decision and a scream. Sometimes I still hear that scream when rain hits the roof. It sounds like static from a radio that won't tune out. A voice lost in the fog of a country that forgot our names as soon as we left. We called it a routine patrol, but it became the one I've never finished walking away from.